أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين وهو خير ناصر ومعين أما بعد ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. So yesterday we looked at a few verses that were talking about tranquility in the context of the incident of Hunayn, not Hunayn, Hudaybiyah. Today we'll look at Hunayn. Hudaybiyah, we saw three verses. First one is when the Muslims pledged, they made a pledge with the Prophet that we are going to be with you. Then Allah says, فَعَلِمَ مَا فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ فَأَنزَلَ السَّكِينَةَ عَلَيْهِمْ. Allah knew what was in their hearts, and hence He sent this tranquility within them. Second instance was when they made the treaty, and it was really a difficult time for the companions. They had to face their emotions. They were undergoing anger, rage. They were doubting the Prophet. At this point, Allah sends down, هُوَ الَّذِي أَنزَلَ السَّكِينَةَ فِي قُلُوبِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ لِيَزْدَادُوا إِيمَانًا مَعَ إِيمَانِهِمْ. He it is who sends down this tranquility on the believers to increase their faith upon their faith. They were wavering at that point. So we see that Allah is sending down Sakina. In the first instance, the Muslims have fully pledged to the Prophet. They have fully submitted to him. They're going to stand by him at every single point. The second instance, they're doubting. There's doubt within their hearts. There is anger. There's all these things. Allah sends down Sakina within their hearts. The third instance is talking generally about the mindset of the people. It says, إِذْ جَعَلَ الَّذِي كَفَرُوا فِي قُلُوبِهِمُ الْحَمِيَّةَ حَمِيَّةَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ. That those who disbelieved had this zealotry, this fire within them, but that which was a fire of Jahiliyyah. It was that of pride, of being of this tribe or that tribe. The opposite of that is فَأَنزَلَ اللَّهُ سَكِينَتَهُ عَلَى رَسُولِهِ وَعَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. So we saw that Allah sends down His tranquility on the believers and on the Prophet. But that tranquility cannot come when the heart is filled with this hamiyah, with this rage, with this zealotry, with this otherness. You know, when you other people put people into boxes, this person is like this, I'm not from them. There the heart constricts. And as we looked at the Mufassirin, they spoke about how the words are used, fi qulubil mu'minina, within the hearts of the believers. The heart is the receptacle of this. After this Treaty of Hudaybiyah, the Muslims are going back to Medina. And at this point, there is the revelation of Surah Fath, and the companions are wondering. Allah is saying, Inna fatahna laka fathan mubina, that we have given you a clear victory. They start questioning the Prophet. Said, "O Prophet, we've come with such a treaty that has put us in these with these conditions that are so humiliating for us, and you're telling us that we have a clear victory." And the language that Quran employs is one of certainty, that we have given you that victory. Definitely we have given you that victory. Inna fatahna laka fathan mubin. Before the victory is even achieved, which is also alluding to the way we ought to have trust in Allah. That Allah has done, He's made out His plan. We just have to trust it. Now, coming back to this treaty, as we outlined yesterday, that the Muslims return back this year, they come back the next year, there's a 10-year truce. Any defectors from the Muslim side that go to the Makkans should not be returned. However, the opposite was the case. If anyone defects from the Makkans towards the Muslims, no, it's the opposite way, sorry. Anyone who defects from the Makkans to the Muslims, they need to be returned, whereas the other way doesn't apply. So the Muslims were very agitated with this, the companions, as we said yesterday. But not seeing the vision, the bigger picture, each of these conditions were beneficial in the long run to the Muslims. Even the one that seemed the worst for them was beneficial, to the extent that when the treaty was being signed, Suhail bin Amr, who was the one with the Prophet coming up with the document, the treaty, his son, according to Seerah literature, Abu Jandal, comes to the Prophet and says, I want to be part of you. So Suhail tells him, are we not going to apply this now? I want him to be the first one returned back. And the Prophet says, we've barely agreed the treaty and you want me to return him back? And Suhail is insistent and he wants his son to be returned. So it is the first person who is returned under this treaty. In the Seerah literature, we also have other people who are returned. So one of them is Abu Basir, and he flees Makkah to come to Medina. The Makkans send 2 envoys to pick up Abu Basir as per the treaty. The Prophet, his hands are tied, he says he has to go. Abu Basir kills one envoy and flees to the coast. And it so happens that a group of them start gathering there who have fled. And they start raiding the caravans of the Quraysh. The Quraysh get annoyed, say, you know what, this clause within the treaty isn't really good for us. Maybe we can accommodate for this clause not to occur. So it just shows that as they planned, Allah is also planning, and Allah is the best of planners. However, within the thick of it, sometimes we may not see it, but we have to have that full trust in Allah. Now, it so happens that this treaty is broken by the Banu Bakr, who are allies of the Quraysh. And apparently the Quraysh in the Seerah literature were supplying the Banu Bakr with weapons. The Prophet goes to the Quraysh and tells them that, hey, you know what? You either pay the blood money of the people killed in the other tribe, which is our ally, Banu Khuzai, or you end the alliance with the Banu Bakr, or you accept that the treaty is void. You invalidate the treaty. The Quraysh don't really reply in a straight answer. This happens in the month of Sha'ban of 8 AH. The treaty is written in 6 AH. The Prophet gathers an army quietly. He gives no news out, and they start marching towards Makkah. Within a month, they're at Makkah. After a month after the breaking of the treaty by the Quraysh, they come around the vicinity of Makkah, and they make it look, they spread out so much that it looks like there's a huge army. There were around 10,000 of them, but they made it look even bigger. Of course, the Makkans send some delegates. They finally agree that the Prophet is coming. We can't do anything. We don't have enough time. We don't have enough resources. Prophet is kind in that instance. Remember, there was the Hamiyatul Jahiliyyah. There's a zealotry of tribalness, that I am of this tribe. And such was in the psyche of the people at the time, that whenever revenge was done, the companions were saying, Al-Yawm Yawmul Malhama. Today, as they're marching towards Makkah, today is going to be a day of massacre. The Prophet says, no. Al-Yawm Yawmul Marhama. Today is a day of mercy. That today is a day of forgiving. Today, when you enter Makkah, make sure that there is no blood spilled. This is the changing of the dynamic the Prophet is bringing in this community. Prophet enters Makkah. He says certain areas are sanctuary for you. If you are within these areas, nothing will happen. If you stand up against us, you will be killed or fought against. Now, when the Prophet gathers all these people, and there's so much to unpack within this very instance, which points towards the way the Prophet was pushing us. He gathers them all, and he tells them the same words that Prophet Yusuf told his brothers. We know the story of Prophet Yusuf, that he's thrown into the well by his own brothers. And the brothers mention that, let's kill him. Uqtulu Yusuf. أو اطرحوه أرضا يخل لكم من وجه أبيكم. Kill Yusuf, or exile him to a land that nobody, that our father won't even remember him. Finally, they put him into the well. He goes through what he goes through. He goes through his journey. And the brothers meet him many years later. And we know the story where Yusuf alayhi salam plots. He puts a cup of the king in his brother's Binyamin's sack. And then the brothers, when Binyamin is caught, the brothers say that in saraka faqad saraka akhun lahu min qabl. If he has stolen, then his brother he had a brother who stole in the past, i.e. Yusuf. Of course, there's a story behind that when Yusuf's aunt was taking care of Yusuf, and it was time for her to give him back to his father, Yaqub, she put the belt of their father on Yusuf and covered it up. Yusuf goes back to his father. The aunt of Yusuf, the sister of Yaqub, says that, what's the sin of the person who steals? And according to their tradition, whoever steals, the punishment of the person who steals is that person becomes the property of the person being stolen from. So his aunt says, Yusuf has stolen from me. He's stolen this belt from me. She wanted to keep him with him. And of course, Yaqub knew the plot and allowed her to keep Yusuf with her. But nonetheless, coming back to this, Yusuf is with his brothers, and they accuse Yusuf of theft. And Yusuf, as the Quran alludes, says, Antum sharrum makana. You are in a very bad state. Internally, all these years have passed. You have thought you have killed your brother, yet you speak ill of your brother, which shows something that is within their hearts, that they were not recipient of this sakina that we're talking about. But nonetheless, after all these years, when they find out that it is Yusuf, say, Anta Yusuf? Say, Ana Yusuf, wa hada akhi. I am Yusuf and this is my brother. At this point, Yusuf alayhi salam, despite everything that was done, he says, La tathriba alaykum. Nothing on you. Don't worry about it. I've forgiven you. All the difficulty you made me go through, you are my blood brothers, you did all these things, nothing on you. I forgive you. The Prophet echoes these same words when he enters Makkah. These people had done atrocious things to the Prophet. They had killed his uncle, they had exiled him, they had banned him, they had fought so many wars against him, and the companions, so many were killed in the process, so much bloodshed. The Prophet enters and says, La tathriba alaykum. Nothing on you. I've forgiven you. Yaghfirullahu liman. Allah forgives whoever He wants. So the Muslims have entered Makkah. They have conquered Makkah. They break all the idols within the Kaaba. And they have declared sanctity to the Haram. They've forgiven everybody who, whatever they've done, there's forgiven, there's amnesty. This is in Ramadan of 8 AH, conquest of Makkah. Around that time, we see there are other tribes in Hunain. There's different tribes that are thinking, oh no, the Muslims have got really strong, we have to do something. And Allah says in the Qur'an, we're talking about this very incident. What happened was that there were two big tribes around Makkah in Ta'if. Ta'if was one of the places where the Prophet went initially to do da'wah, to bring them to preach about Islam. They mocked him, they threw stones at him, and he was injured, he came back. At that point, there are these big two tribes, the Hawazin and the Thaqif, two large confederate tribes made up of different tribes. They said, these guys are not going to rest, so we need to gather an army. Prophet gathers an army of 12,000 people, alluded in the Quran, 925. لَقَدْ نَصَرَكُمُ اللَّهُ فِي مَوَاتِنٍ كَثِيرًا. Allah has helped you in different situations. وَيَوْمَ حُنَيْنٍ. In the day of Hunayn, remember, إِذْ أَعْجَبَتْكُمْ كَثْرَتُكُمْ. That your numbers were so large that it even surprised you. The narrations mention that people were so happy with their numbers. There were 12,000 strong, 10,000 Muslims who came from Medina and around Medina. 2,000 Makkans had converted. So within a few weeks, these 2,000 are now joining the Prophet in going towards these tribes in Hunayn to fight them. This 12,000 strong force goes towards Hunayn, goes towards fighting. But the Quran says, إِذْ أَعْجَبَتْكُمْ كَثْرَتُكُمْ. That this, when you took pride in your numbers, where you thought that you're going to be so powerful. Hadith mentioned that they say that nobody's going to defeat us today. We're so much, we can't be defeated with this large number of soldiers. And here, there is a stumbling block. If you want to have that tranquility from God, you can't have any pride within your heart. The verse continues. فَلَمْ تُغْنِ عَنْكُمْ شَيْئًا. But regardless of this large number, it proved no advantage to you. On the other side, the Hawazin and the other tribes have got so many people also. And their leader says, you know what, we are going to go not only with our men, we are going to go with our women, we are going to go with our children, we are going to go with our cattle, because we don't want anyone to run away. They pass by and there's this old blind man. He says, what's going on? He's told this is what's happening. He says, what a fool. Because if they lose, then everything is lost. But nonetheless, we're coming back to the psyche of what's going on within the believers, where they think that they are in large numbers, that they are not going to be defeated. And أَعْجَبَتْكُمْ from the same verb as ujb, pride. The Mufassirin talk about this, that pride is one of the greatest veils in front of Allah. Continues, فَلَمْ تُغْنِي عَنْكُمْ شَيْئًا. That despite this large numbers, nothing will avail you. Nothing. عَنْكُمْ شَيْئًا. Nothing will be of any avail to you. وَضَاقَتِ الْأَرْضُ عَلَيْكُمْ بِمَا رَحُبَتْ. That the earth has become constricted despite its vastness. They were in Hunayn. As they were approaching towards these people, what happened is that they come through a pass. And in this pass, the Banu Hawazin and the other tribes, they had hid themselves so nicely and so hidden that they had their archers. The Muslims didn't know that they were there hidden. They started attacking the Muslims. The Muslims, the vanguard, the ones in the front, started fleeing. They started, there's a whole chaos at that time. All these people are running, and the Prophet's mule is being pushed, according to accounts. At this point, people are running away, and the Prophet is shouting out. Abbas, the uncle of the Prophet, Ali, the cousin of the Prophet, they're all shouting out to stay. Abbas, who has known for his strong and large voice, calls out to them, "O you who pledged in Ridwan, where are you going?" At that point, the Muslims had to come back. They realized that they were not doing what was right. But it's interesting, the Quran talks about how the earth is constricted despite it being so vast, which is also pointing to within ourselves that despite what's happening externally, if our internal state is so constricted, we can't do much. So we have to work with ourselves first. So at this point, Prophet is calling out to them, Abbas, others are calling out to them, they come back. And it's interesting to see what's happening, that they have this pride, that pride breaks, that identity is broken. And then Allah says, Thumma, only then, after this pride is broken, after this identity is broken, After all of this is removed, ثُمَّ أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ سَكِينَتَهُ عَلَى رَسُولِهِ. Then Allah sends His tranquility upon His messenger and upon the believers. وَأَنزَلْنَا جُنُودًا لَمْ تَرَوْهَا وَعَذَّبَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. Then Allah sent His angels which you could not see. It's only after this, ujub is removed, the self-admiration, that we can be recipients of this sakina, this tranquility of God. So coming back to the previous points that we've been talking about, the heart needs to be free of everything other than Allah for us to be able to receive that. The next verse that we talk about related to this notion of sakina, and we said that sakina comes, the root verb sakana is used in various forms, but we're just looking at this one form of sakina. I'm going back in history. When the Prophet has proclaimed his prophethood, the Muslims have migrated from Makkah towards Medina. Prophet is there in Makkah. The Quraysh realize that most of the Muslims have gone, those converts have gone, and the Prophet's time is there to go to Medina, to migrate. So they meet up at Darun Nadwa. Darun Nadwa was like a meeting place in Makkah, where they would have discussions and make decisions, important decisions. So they say, you know what, we have to get rid of this prophet, this person who claims to be a prophet. So there's either one of three options. One is we imprison him. Two is we exile him. Or three is we kill him. If we kill him, there'll be internal strife. The Banu Hashim, strong tribe, they're going to rise up, as was the tribal nature at that time, and it'll be a problematic for us. Some mention that Abu Jahl came up with a solution that one person from each tribe goes and attacks the Prophet. Some say, particularly within the Sunni narrations, that a very finely dressed man, a sheikh from the Arab comes, who they say it may be shaitan, comes and gives this solution, that one person from each tribe goes and kills the Prophet, so that none of the tribes are implicated, all of them are implicated, and the Banu Hashim can't fight all of them. Anyway, the Quran talks about this incident of the cave. The Prophet then leaves. إِلَّا تَنْصُرُوا فَقَدْ نَصَرَهُ اللَّهُ إِذْ أَخْرَجَهُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا ثَانِيَ اثْنَيْنِ. They're talking about that incident when the Prophet goes out towards this cave, he meets Abu Bakr, and he goes, the second of the two companions, and they go to the cave. The Sirah literature talks about this. They stay in the cave for 3 days. Abu Bakr's servant comes and brings them food. The Quraysh finally track them to this place, to the cave, and to an instant where they could see the feet of the Quraysh. As we saw the image, that it was a very small opening. They come to this cave. Allah talks about this here, and Allah says, فَقَدْ نَصَرَهُ اللَّهُ. Allah has already helped him. Again, that language of inna fatahna, we have already given the victory. فَقَدْ نَصَرَهُ, Allah has already helped him, already granted him victory. When they expelled him, they drove him out of Makkah, he came to the cave, he assured his companion. His companion, Abu Bakr, is worried. The Prophet says, La tahzan, don't worry, don't be scared, don't be sad. And here there's something that is very interesting where the Mufassirin talk about. The solution is not to be safe. The solution isn't to come out of the situation. It's La tahzan, inna Allaha ma'ana. Allah is with us. It's not that we're safe or we're unsafe or that we'll reach our destination. Allah is with us, and that's more than enough. Inna Allaha ma'ana. And this ma'iyah is very important to understand, that in every instance of our life, if we recognize that, that's enough. We don't have to have a solution or reach a target. Allah is with us, and once we have that realization, then we can overcome anything. Yes, we do our best, but that realization is really powerful, and that's the antidote of not being fearful and scared or sad about situation. And at this point, and only after we have freed ourselves, again, our heart of all this fear and everything else, and recognized that Allah is with us, then Allah says, فَأَنزَلَ اللَّهُ سَكِينَتَهُ عَلَيْهِ وَأَيَّدَهُ بِجُنُودٍ لَمْ تَرَوْهَا. That Allah sends down His sakina on him. Of course, the Shia Mufassirin would say on the Prophet. And He helps him with forces that they could not see. Again, the Mufassirin talk about these different forces. It could be in different forms. It could be that spider web, could be that dove, it could be in different ways that Allah helps. Indeed, that's the second verse we're talking about, where Allah talks about this sakina. The last verse that Allah uses this term of sakina in this form is in the story of Bani Israel. Bani Israel come and they've lost their land, they've lost their cohesion, they come to their prophet, in the Islamic tradition, Samuel. They say that, you know what, we need a king who can lead us in battle. The Quran alludes to their mindset of how they were, that they wanted to go to battle, but the prophet says, appoint for us a king and we will fight in the cause of Allah. And the prophet tells them that, are you not going to cower, you're going to get scared and you won't fight in the way of Allah, like perhaps because of their mindset of what has happened in the past. And so they say, no, we want a king, we're going to fight, we're going to stick by this king. So Allah appoints a king for them, and says that He has appointed Talut, Saul, to be your king. But at that point, again, what's happening in their hearts is they've been given a clear sign. They asked the prophet, appoint us a king. And at that same breath, they're saying, we don't want this king. Says, how can he be our king when some of us are more deserving of kingship? He has not been blessed with vast riches. Again, alluding to this mindset of these people who are looking at it very materially, but there's something much more in the story of Talut and Jalut. Allah talks about this in other places also, where Talut, Saul, is very small in number. The army is small, and there's a whole story of how they're told to go to the river and not drink from it, and the believers are those who don't drink from that river. Then they face Jalut. Allah then says in the Qur'an, which is reiterated in Badr, that how many a small group has defeated a big group. Kam min fi'atin qalila ghalabu fi'atan kathira. That how many times in history a small group of people has destroyed a big group of people, giving us hope that at times we may think that situations are such that aren't going in a certain way. Have trust in Allah. All of these points have a message which is pointing towards the trust in Allah, Tawheed, and believing that there is this one God. He has absolute power. You just have to have full trust in Him. And then the verses continue, and this is where the term comes in, that a sign of this Talut being a king is that the chest will come, Tabut fihi sakina, in which is sakina, in which is tranquility from your Lord, and a remnant of what the family of Musa and the family of Harun have left behind. Now, some have said that the tranquility is the only verse that doesn't have tranquility in a definite sense. Fihi sakinatun min rabbikum. In it is a tranquility from your Lord. The other verses we were speaking about, there is the tranquility, there is His tranquility. Here it's just a tranquility from your Lord. Mufassirin talk about perhaps this is talking about the Tawrat or the scriptures of Musa, which has a message. And really, it boils down to that, the message of the Tawrat, the message of the scriptures of Musa, the message of all these divine books is pointing to that one thing that brings about tranquility within us, that is the remembrance of God. Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innal qulub. It's only by the tranquility, by the remembrance of God, that the hearts become at ease. So there is that two elemented thing. One element is within ourselves. We need to do that work within us. We need to realize, are we going to be in certain situations where we have to fully trust Allah, like the companions fully trusted the Prophet in the Pledge of Ridwan, and only then, when we have fully trusted Allah, and we have put our hands fully up and said, you know what, Allah, we're going to do our best, we trust you, then Allah sends down His Sakina. Or perhaps it may be an instance where we have pride, or we have the othering of others within ourselves, and only then can we, once we remove that from our hearts, then Allah sends down that Sakina. So all of this points us to something that we need to work with ourselves. So there's going to be something. I don't know if you've ordered some takeaway. Okay, then it's going to be this takeaway. So we have to take some things from these few verses that we've been looking at. And I'd like to open it up to you guys. What have you taken away from this? What? Tell me more. Nothing. You're not taking away anything. So then give it to me. Yeah. Yeah. Mm. So you're saying we need to do work with ourselves first before being a recipient of that divine grace. Yeah. The Quran talks about. Yeah. Right. The Quran also talks about fasalat awdiyatun biqadariha, that the rivers flow according to their capacity. And in some texts that talk about this, it's talking about the human capacity. However bigger the capacity is, and the more work we do with ourselves, our capacity increases, that the blessings come in that capacity. But yeah, in this context, talking about sakina, it seems to be, in these few verses, something very specific that is got by in situations that are very difficult, internal tribulation, and it's sent down, anzala, as all these verses saying, it's sent down by Allah. So ultimately this tranquility seems to be one of a higher state, that once one has worked with themselves, then they can be recipient to this. But yes, there are other forms of blessings of God that allow us to go towards Him, but this seems to be something very specific according to these verses. Okay, if that's it, then we will end here. And thank you everyone for coming. Salawat ala Muhammad.